This is George Dionne of the Rock is George podcast, and this is a KNAC.com exclusive interview with Frontiers music songwriter Giancarlo Floridia. Giancarlo, you're mostly a songwriter from what I know. Are you currently in a band?
So I stopped playing. I had a deal in Europe with, strangely enough, Frontiers competition. They're called Scarlet Records. And then I had a deal in Japan with Spiritual Beast, my band called Faith's Edge. It was me, Tim Gaines from Stryper, Matt Starr from Ace Frehley's band, Alex DeRosso he was in Dokken for a little bit, and Del Vecchio played keys on the third album. So what happened was those albums built me a reputation as a writer, and then I stopped the band just because I'm too busy writing for everybody instead. And those albums do very well. So maybe I'll go back to doing it, or I might pitch an idea for Frontiers to do maybe a solo album for me, like re-recording a lot of the songs I've written. But right now my focus is primarily writing for Frontiers music and my favorite artists that strangely have been reaching out to me.
And that's why we're talking today, your relationship with Frontiers music and the songwriting on a lot of their recent material. How did you first, I know you mentioned you had the band with the competition with Frontiers, but how did you get the opportunity to consistently become a songwriter for Frontiers?
So what happened was I was working on I was going to do a fifth Faith's Edge album, and I was talking to Alessandro Del Vecchio about it, and he said, why don't you come write for Frontiers? Because I've always wanted to be on Frontiers. I mean, literally, I had done video production for them, but as a writer, and I even wanted Faith's Edge to be on Frontiers. For whatever reason, it didn't work out. I won't badmouth anybody, but, it didn't work out. So Del Vecchio, here's how I got the gig. This is pretty wild. Del Vecchio said, I'm going to give you a chance to come write for us because you've proven yourself as a writer, but show me what you got. Like, send me something, impress me. So the strange story about this is Jani Lane got me this gig, and his wife, Kim. It's kind of a sad story, but it's the truth. So when Jani died, Jani was like my inspiration. He'd call me on the phone when I was a teenager. I used to watch him on MTV when I was a kid. We became friends, and when he passed away, it was devastating. I did the final album cover for Liberty and Justice with somebody at my college, The Sin, with the blood and the roses. I did that. It's weird how it fell into my lap a few days later after he passed. And I sang a song on that album, Sin, and then I did a song called Broken Bones on Liberty and Justice. So Jani has always been just this important thing in my life. So when Jani passed away, unfortunately, I found out a lot about the situation. Thank you. I became friends with his wife, Kim, who broke down everything to me, what happened that night. And I supported her through his passing. Unfortunately, she carried a lot of guilt over Jani's passing. Like, what if I could have changed that night? What if I would have done differently something and he would still be here? And that ate up on her. I don't want to say everything that she told me because, she's, it's private, but I really tried to get her through it. We would talk on Facebook. And at the time, they were living right here, strange enough, in Redondo Beach, where I'm doing this. I just thought Jani would be okay. So I didn't reach out a lot at that point. I just kind of left it alone. I would see him on TV having trouble. So the point is, with Frontiers, when they told me, here's your chance, they didn't tell me who the artist was. Let's see what you got. We're not going to tell you who it is. So I log on to the internet like that day, and an article comes up, Kimberly Nash Lane dead in car accident. And it freaking just devastated me. I picked up my guitar, and in 24 hours, I wrote a song called The Pain of Goodbye, which is about me meeting Jani, his situation. He finally found love in this person, and now they're both gone from my life. That song was just I sent it to Alessandro. He's like, this is like the best song you've ever written. And that song made the Cleanbreak debut album with James Durbin, Perry Richardson, Robert Sweet, and Mike Flint. I wrote I wrote another song for it. They were so impressed. And then that album cracked the Billboard charts twice, 7 for hard rock and 10 for new artists. What happened was that got me in the door, and Robert Sweet kept telling Michael Sweet about these songs for Cleanbreak that were amazing. And Michael Sweet, I produced a video. I was a production assistant for Iconic. And my responsibility was to pick up Michael Sweet and Lisa Sweet. And I had problems because Tim Gaines was in my band. And strange enough, the interview I did with KNAC with Tim Gaines was the last interview I think I did. And it caused a lot of rifts. It was my interview for my band, and Tim announced he was leaving Stryper in that interview. So I thought Michael Sweet was going to hate my guts. But Michael's like one of my favorites of all time. So Michael, I'm like, I got to make this right. So I pick up Michael and Lisa, and he knew who I was. And we made up instantly at LAX airport. He gave me a hug. I said I was sorry. It wasn't trying to make problems for you or Stryper or bring a bunch of heat to the band and fighting with you and Tim. Tim just told his side that he was no longer in the band. So Michael and I, so we get in the car at LAX, right? No nerves at all. And he goes, I keep hearing about this Cleanbreak from my brother, Robert. I want to hear it. And Michael's sitting in my car, and I'm just like, and Lisa Sweet's in the back. I'm like, this is like a weird dream, right? At LAX. And I go, look, Michael, I love you, but I'm a little nervous showing you these songs because the album wasn't out yet. It was like the pre-production. And Lisa's like, come on, Gian. I'm like, all right. So I played him The Pain of Goodbye and No Other Heart, which is a closing song on the album. And Michael was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And we hung out for 2 or 3 days doing the Iconic video. And Michael and I just became like tight immediately. So he goes home. I'm like, man, I'm going to miss them. They're great people. So I go upstairs, to think about some more writing for the label and what I'm going to do. And Michael had told me, and I already seen about they were doing Sweet and Lynch 3. I was at Guitar Center one day, and some guy was talking about him. I heard Michael Sweet and George Lynch are doing a new album. I can't wait to hear it. And I was sitting behind him, the guy at the register, thinking, man, I'd love to write on that album. So I'm upstairs. I'll never forget my phone, Michael Sweet. I'm like, what's up, Michael? He's like, I was thinking about you. I was going into my studio downstairs, and I couldn't stop thinking about you. Like, you're such a great writer, and I'm doing this Sweet and Lynch thing, but I'm not sure what to do yet because I saw what George wanted to do, atheism versus Christianity. That was going to be the concept for Sweet and Lynch 3. And I said to Mike, and Michael's not going to sing about that. It's just not going to happen. So I said to him, though, I get what George is going at. Maybe if you did this or that. I gave him a few recommendations. He's like, that's not a bad idea. I go, yeah. And then we're done talking. 2 days later, Michael Sweet comes up on my phone again. Like, what's up, bro? And he's like, I don't know, man. I don't know this thing. And I'm like, here's what I would do. Just go with this or that. And he goes, do you want to write with us? I'm like, okay, my favorite guitar player of all time, my favorite heavy metal singer. Yeah. So he says, same type of thing. Like, let me see what you got. I already know you're good, but let's see what you got. So within 24 hours, I wrote, I put it out and formatted all the lyrics, everything, bridges. I give Michael multiple options of things to do. I know songwriter land. I wrote You'll Never Be Alone immediately. That's the first single. World Full of Lies. And It's Time to Believe immediately within 24 hours. Boom, 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 formatted him. He was like, this is exactly what we need. And all those songs made the album. I can hear Michael's voice in my head singing. So I'm able to write it on paper, send it to him, and it comes out great. He made some changes here and there, but he was so impressed. He said, do you want to do the whole album? And the album, Heart and Sacrifice, I co-wrote the whole thing. And yeah, everybody loved the record. I think it's the best one. And yeah. So that's what happened. That's what started this madness.
So sort of a 6 degrees of separation with Michael Sweet. So you start with the Cleanbreak thing, which has his brother in it. Then you
Yeah.
got you working with Michael Sweet and George Lynch. From what I understand, you also worked with Michael Sweet and Alessandro Del Vecchio and Soul Driver. And
Yes.
I've also heard that there's a Michael
Lynch Mob.
there's Lynch Mob as well.
I
So that's
co-wrote that also.
and then I also heard that there's a Michael Sweet solo album that's kind of been hanging in the wings here.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay, we can get onto that too. So, okay. So, since they were in, okay, so Cleanbreak led to Sweet and Lynch. So what happened is Michael and George were both so happy with the work I did. Now, George Lynch did not know I was involved. I met George producing the videos for the Second End Machine, and I like George's guitar. And we talked about maybe him building me a guitar, and we emailed and blah, blah, blah. So I talked to George about my guitar, and I said, hey, man, how do you like the Sweet and Lynch? And he's like, this is before it's done. This is my favorite one. He said, oh, man, it's just so great. And he said some other funny stuff where he was very happy about the result. I respected them both in the writing. I did Dawkinish, like songs like It Rains Again, or I would do You'll Never Be Alone for Michael. It was like that good and evil, half and half. And anyway, so I said to George, well, I'm glad you like it. And he's like, wait a second. He's like, you're the guy that Michael brought in? Michael didn't tell him. Michael just simply said, I got a secret weapon. Just trust me, George. And George is like, all right. And the secret weapon was me, and George didn't know it. And so George was very impressed. And he's like, oh, man, oh, man. So I said, look, George, outside of the guitar we were working on for me, I said, if you ever need anything again, you let me know. 20 minutes later, in my inbox, there's an email with Gabriel Colon, the new Lynch Mob singer, saying, Giancarlo's incredible. He's co-writing the new Lynch Mob album. Go to his house and let's get this done. Now, okay, Michael's my favorite, like, hard rock singer, but like George Lynch is my favorite guitar player of all time. Like, I was a kid in my room learning all of his licks. So to have him ask me to co-write a Lynch Mob album, the entire thing was mind-blowing. Like, my childhood came back, like it was meant to be. And there was one problem. I said to George, I said, all right, let's do it. What do we got going? He's like, well, there's a problem. It's due to Frontiers Music now. So Gabriel, and he'll say, there were some delays. And I was like, oh, now? He's like, now. So my goals on the album were to, one, bring back the hooks from the first two albums, multiple harmonies, soulful lyrics, like the first two records. I listened to some of the more recent Lynch Mob stuff, but my goal was to get it back to the OG. So Gabriel came over, but there were songs I was hearing in my head immediately without help from anybody. How You Fall, I heard immediately, sang it, whispered it, Mike sent it to him, Gabriel relearned it. Caught Up, I wrote immediately. The Sinner, Erase, it just, the whole album came to me. And then the stuff that I wasn't as heavily as involved with, they got it done. But that was only like 2 or 3 songs that I wasn't heavily involved with. So Babylon, so Cleanbreak, Heart and Sacrifice, Babylon. Then Michael was so impressed with Sweet and Lynch, he brought me on for Soul Driver with Alessandro Del Vecchio. So I co-wrote that. My brain was going to explode. And I got through it. I would come here. I would, like, for Soul Driver, I would just get in my car, drive here. And it was originally going to be a Michael Sweet solo album. And then Frontiers wanted to give it a project name. And Michael said, well, I want one word. And my band was called Faith's Edge. So I said SD, because Sweet and Del Vecchio just wasn't going to pop. We already have Sweet and Lynch. So I said, SD, what about Faith's Edge? Like, 2 words. And I said, how about Soul Divider? Because Stryper had a song called Divider, Soul. And Michael's like, And he hit me up. He's like, I got it. Soul, S-O-L-E, meaning one, Driver. I'm like, dude, that's it. Everybody loved the name, and Soul Driver it was. So I co-wrote that entire album. The fans liked it. The strangest thing to me on that album is Spinning Wheel. When I wrote it here, I sat in the back. I came here, I sat down, and I started coming up with this weird George Michael-ish Sting, Peter Gabriel type of concept. And I remember, this is too far out for Frontiers music. It's just not a hair metal headbanger thing. And when they started doing the demos, I remember I wasn't even going to send it. Michael's like, Spinning Wheel. Oh man, Spinning Wheel. This song's a hit. I'm like, out of all the stuff, Spinning Wheel. And then sure enough, they made a video for Spinning Wheel. It's kind of like my Cherry Pie song, like where you didn't, you're like, huh? So if you want to get a rise out of me, say Spinning Wheel's my favorite. I love Spinning Wheel. I think it's one of the best songs I've worked on. But at the time, I didn't see it. I just thought it was too far out. So yeah, Soul Driver. I'm really proud of that too.
With the albums we've mentioned so far, you've had an idea of who you're writing for.
Right.
Is it always that way, that you know who you're writing for in advance, or are you submitting music that just ends up on a release of theirs at some point?
So that's a great question. So my goal is to, how do I put this? Not have a stagnant sound, whereas everything on Frontiers music is going to sound the same. When it's a Lynch Mob album, I worked on a Lynch Mob album. When it was Michael Sweet, I knew it was Michael Sweet. When it was Sweet and Lynch, I knew. Now, Cleanbreak was the rare exception, the first album. They told me after the first song got approved who was on it. So if you listen to like No Other Heart, it's got a Robert Sweet type of swing to it. It sounds like In God We Trust, because I knew Robert and Perry were on it. So now it's a different ball game where they're usually telling me who it's for, because that's important. For example, where we're leading to this year is Cleanbreak 2. I just wrote for. I knew it was for Cleanbreak. And Giant, they didn't tell me. They didn't want to tell me. Maybe because it was like their baby band, like we love Giant. Del Vecchio was like, I need your talents. I need your talents for something. I'm like, I'm glad they didn't tell me when I sent over all this stuff for the song, because I would have been like, oh, Dan Huff, oh. You know, he's like a songwriting legend and producer legend. So I would have been a little stressed. So I'm glad they didn't tell me on that one. But for Cleanbreak, I knew this is for James Durbin's voice, you know, and I'm really happy. I think they're going to announce soon the release. It's done. And it's really killer stuff that I wrote for. I got 3 songs on it that are I'm really proud of. But they were directly for James Durbin. Other than one song that's going to be on there, I can't say the title yet because there's no press release. I wrote one song for Jeff Tate I was going to submit because I met his guitarist at the time, Kieran. He's in Faster Pussycat. And I was going to send it to Jeff Tate, like, hey, man, I've been writing for Frontiers. Check this out. And the song's killer. And I just kept hearing James Durbin singing in my head. I had up Alessandro. I said, look, man, I wrote this for Jeff Tate, but I think James Durbin would rip this song apart. And they were like, we want this song immediately for Cleanbreak. So I sent all the files, and that's on the album. So that's a rare exception where I wrote a song for another artist and it ended up going to another project.
Are you going to be working on the next Sweet Lynch album, or is it too early to say?
I haven't got word yet. Michael told me there's some stuff coming down the pike that we're going to do because him and I have a very special chemistry, which is strange because Michael doesn't work with anybody, like in terms of lyricism, especially other than his brother, like on In God We Trust. Him and I just have a real special connection. If they do one, I'm sure I'd be brought back. I'm hoping we'll do another Soul Driver. I have some other stuff that I sent to him for that album you're talking about, that solo album. I sent him, I think I drafted out 16 or 17 ideas to help him also. Not that he needs my help, okay? It's more or less like I think we enjoy working together. I think I add an element, I don't want to say less religious. I don't know the words. It just works, like leaving it all behind, or you have that hope there, but that dark side that I have because of my history growing up and a lot of things that happened to me, it kind of complements him a little bit, honestly. So it's kind of like Against the Law, where it's kind of contemporary, but I'm trying to bring it into today. Like Lynch Mob, How You Fall. When I heard it, I heard Tooth and Nail. I'm like, how do I bring Tooth and Nail in today? So I wrote a song about, abuse, and whenever you abuse your family members or whatever, it goes to shit. I wanted to take the 80s stuff, but give it a modern day spin. So when somebody puts on, they're like, man, I can relate to that right now. So that's my goal. And when I'm writing for Michael, I respect his religious aspects, but because I'm a believer also, but I try to kind of edge it out a little bit with my dark personality. It is what it is. I can't run from it. Might as well utilize it for something positive, right?
Right. So the Lynch Mob album, Babylon, came out in 2023, allegedly the final Lynch Mob album, but it did really well, and it got some response. So I would imagine there's got to be talk of being like, hey, let's not put it to bed yet.
I talked to George last week. I went to go see him. He's like, hey, Giancarlo. He's so proper. Hey, Giancarlo. And we're hanging out backstage, and me, Gabriel, and my son was there. He knows my son because my son worked on some videos. I go, look, George, we need to talk. I'm like, and I already talked to Jaron and Gabriel about it, and they're all in. The album succeeded like very well. Even Blabbermouth gave it a good review. We were like, what? Imagine if I had 6 months to work on a Lynch Mob album, what we can do. That was just came to me. I said, look, George, I know this is a final tour, but I'm ready to write another Lynch Mob album, dude. I'm like, I just feel with this lineup, it's not over. Like, I would love to do another one. So it's up to George. He didn't say no. He didn't say, I'm done. We're finishing this up. He kind of gave, I don't know. I don't want to say too much, but he gave me more like it's a possibility.
You mentioned that he's one of your idols on the guitar. You have your own custom Mr. Scary guitars, I believe. They're kind of like, I'm sure I'll show a picture with the interview, but it's sort of the tiger print with like a little smear over it in color, right?
Yeah, that's kind of like, we work on ideas together, like kind of like songwriting when he built my guitars. So I wanted to pay him a tribute because his guitar playing got me through so much as a kid. And I'd come home after school instead of getting high during the grunge movement and would learn his parts. So it's in my blood to kind of be able to understand what he's doing. And I said, I want to make one guitar that's a nod to you, but also something for me. And I'm a big 80s freak, so it's like a purple sparkle. So he put the purple sparkle on it, and then he sanded through it so you could see the tiger coming through. So it's kind of like something it's called a distressed tiger. That's what we came up with. So it's a nod to his history and my thanking him, but also it's my guitar now too. So yeah, that's a cool guitar. I like it. We're doing another one. I'm going to try to convince him to do like an Ultimate Warrior type thing, but we'll see. I'm working on them. We're doing one more in the next few months, I think.
I notice you're a wrestling fan, certainly of the Ultimate Warrior. One of my favorite wrestlers of all time, even though I'm wearing a CM Punk shirt right now. But obviously, wrestling's big in the Florida area. You're down in Florida, from what I understand. So
no, I'm in California.
Oh, you're in California. Okay.
My brother's in Florida. So my brother, I've been involved with wrestling since I was a kid. My brother works he does stuff with New Japan Pro Wrestling. And we have family that works for WWE. And my brother does stuff with WWE also behind the scenes. His name's David Floridia. And so 80s and early 90s wrestling is a part of my life because when we were kids, I would just go to the shows with them. I'm not really into the new wrestling. I'm into the 80s and early 90s. I used to go to I got to see Ultimate Warrior fight Undertaker in a body bag match. I went to WrestleMania 9. Like, you could see me on the aisles. I posted a few photos. So I'm on the aisle. So my kids, I'm like, look, Dad was at WrestleMania. It was like considered the worst WrestleMania ever, but I had a blast. It was at Caesar's Palace and toga parties. And it was such a fun weekend. My brother used to live with Yokozuna in Las Vegas for a while. They lived together. and Yoko Rodney, they were like family to us. Unfortunately, Rodney passed away. So my brother's heavily involved with the wrestling industry, and he's in Florida. He has a gym, and strange enough, James Durbin follows my brother's gym. So there are a lot of scenes on WWE where you see people training at the BJJ gym in Florida. That's my brother's gym. So my family, we love to rock. And then my daughter, she's in all these music videos for LA Guns and Black Swan and Cleanbreak. So we're kind of a family of people that like doing this stuff.
I was at WrestleMania 14 in the Boston Garden back in the God, that was probably the 90s. It was Shawn Michaels passing the torch to Stone Cold.
Oh yeah, I like that era too. I like that era also. The last bit I got of it is like when I was like 18 and 98. I went to see when the Kiss wrestler came out, the Demon. I was at that. So after WCW, like I guess 2001 is when I kind of stopped, when they brought like Mr. Perfect back and Ric Flair. I like that era. That was kind of the end of it for me. I stopped. I don't know, Ultimate Warrior. You can't lose the Warrior. He's just like, to me, the greatest of all time. I know he wasn't the greatest wrestler, but God, the energy, the character, the genius of that character with the different color coordinations and a lot of the stuff he did before he passed away was highly inspirational, very motivating about believing in yourself. So I got an Ultimate Warrior tattoo on my wrist. You can see it.
I can't.
It's says always believe. And it's got his mask etched into my wrist, and it says Ultimate Warrior in Japanese. That's how big of an Ultimate Warrior fan. But it connects to hair metal, right? That era.
Absolutely. He's got that headbanging song.
Yeah. We should do that for Frontiers. Go, 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 go.
Exactly.
You never know. Yeah.
So you mentioned you're working on the next Giant album. Are there any other albums that you're working on that you can mention?
Cleanbreak 2.
Okay.
They're both coming out this year. I don't have the dates, but I got the cut of my stuff with Giant. It's really cool. I can't give out too much detail, but it was supposed to come out last year. As you know, as everybody knows, there's been some changes with Del Vecchio at Frontiers. So I think maybe there's some delays, but now everything's coming back together. I'm working with the new guy over there who's done some producing, Aldo. He produced the last Jeff Tate Sweet Oblivion. So him and I are going to work together on some stuff also. But for sure this year, co-write on the Giant and also Cleanbreak 2. Cleanbreak 2, man, the stuff I wrote for it, I'm really excited about people hearing. I'm excited about Giant too. But it's just like a song I did with Giant.
Sure. Well,
but it's still a big deal.
Let's talk a little bit about Del Vecchio, because I think it's bigger news than anybody's making it out to be. I mean, sort of the core producer, songwriter, jack of all trades at Frontiers. He's decided to part ways, kind of do his own thing. I know he's still going to work on producing music and writing music on his own. Does that put more workload on writers like you and everybody else that's in their pool of songwriters?
Good question. I would say for me, because I was worried at first. I'm like, I hope they're going to keep me on board. But those albums succeeded, so they are keeping me. And Aldo and I have been talking, and they've approved some more of my songs. I think it's going to be an interesting change. With a guy like me, I'm more guitar oriented, where Del Vecchio is heavier on the keyboards. We're going to find out. I mean, in terms of the workload, what Ollie did for years, it's incredible. I don't know all the inner workings of what happened. I know a little from what I've heard, but I'm obviously not going to talk about it. It's not my place to talk about it. All I know is with me and Ollie, we're cool. I'll probably work with him again too. But with Frontiers, my goal whenever I'm writing for Frontiers is to take it in a more guitar Ollie's more like Journey and bands like that. I'm more of an MTV headbanger kid. So with my direction, whenever I'm writing for Frontiers, it would be more the lines of Striper, Rat, Lynch Mob, Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime. Heavier guitars, big hooks. I'm not really into Journey. I'm not really into, I like Foreigner, but I'm just not into that stuff as much. I'm an MTV kid. I'm more heavy into MTV pop than I would be into Journey or Foreigner. Like I like George Michael, Bryan Adams, Richard Marx, and stuff like that. So I think when I'm writing, it's just going to be more guitar heavy. And let's see. I mean, so far the stuff I've written, people seem to be digging, and I take my time on each project. So I'm ready for the workload in terms of songwriting. In terms of producing, and that's not my gig. I'm more like focus on the writing for the label when they give me work. And I'll submit stuff too. I'm in good enough to where I can just send it and it's either approved or denied. So I'm going to be doing that too.
And you mentioned earlier you do video production, and it doesn't matter whether you've written a song for the artist or not. You've pretty much done videos for a lot of the roster at Frontiers.
A lot. And I write scripts too. So that kind of fell into my lap from songwriting. Like LA Guns, Get Along. Frontiers sent me the stuff. I have my partner Enzo Maceo, great photographer, great video guy. And they sent me Get Along. I listened to it and I visualized the whole video in my head with my daughter in it. Because people are like, your daughter's cool. She looks like, Alyssa Milano. You should get her in some of the Frontiers videos. And I just saw the whole video in my head and I typed it up. I sent it to Enzo. They sent LA Guns approved it, and Get Along it is. And Jesse Snyder plays her dad, which is pretty trippy to have. I guess Dee Snyder's my daughter's grandpa. That was weird. We brought Jesse in, great actor. And then I wrote the script for Diamonds also, which is kind of about me when I would go out and write for Frontiers. So it has my daughter with a notepad going and working on these ideas. And then she walks in the room with LA Guns at the end. That's kind of like me saying when I was writing for Michael Sweet or George Lynch or Cleanbreak, how it comes to life. So that's what that video is. Like my daughter's writing and now she's in this room with LA Guns and her song's coming to life. So the Diamonds video, that story I wrote, is basically about me and my songwriting for Frontiers. So those have been amazing things. I've done acting in a few Frontiers videos. I play a homeless guy in a Robin McCauley video, standing on the edge. My hair's cut now. I was in the Cleanbreak video for Coming Home. I'm on the plane with the band, and my daughter's in that on the plane. She's a steward. That was an amazing moment to be in a video with your daughter. And I'm in Terry's video for Shattered. Terry Eluse. It's called Land of Gypsies. I'm like the mob hit car driver. So I've done a little acting in some of the Frontiers videos. It's fun, man. I love life. It's been a fun couple of years for me, man.
Well, I have to say, with the resume that you're building up here, you really should have your own website kind of hawking all these things, because finding information on you was very difficult.
Really? Did you spell the last name right?
Of course I did.
It's built. Okay, so here's the thing. I built everything on the Faith's Edge name. So there's tons of stuff on Faith's Edge. Okay. So now my name is, as a solo thing, is building and building and building more. Like I just saw Discogs did a thing on me with all the albums. Amazon made something for me. So that's now starting to build out because I put so much into Faith's Edge. Now I'm just doing it with me, so it's building now.
You did a few albums with Faith's Edge that I found.
Yeah.
When did that become an inactive band?
Last album we did is 2019, and then COVID hit, and then I talked to Del Vecchio about doing another, and that's when the Frontiers opportunity. So I was planning on doing another Faith's Edge album about 2.5 years ago and doing like a comeback, and then I'm not going to stop writing for Frontiers. It's too much of it's hard to be a new artist. Like, I know I'm younger than the guys I work with, but it's very hard. Like, I got a lot of press and stuff, but it was brutal. Michael Sweet, George Lynch, these guys have been doing it for 30, 40 years. Might as well write for them, and it gets my name even more recognition. I get more respect now than I did. I'm just being honest, than when I had my own band. And even though I was doing okay, like now it's like a whole other level of respect I get in the industry compared to doing my own band. So I'm just going to keep doing it.
All right. Those are all the questions I have for you today, Giancarlo. It sounds like you got your work cut out for you there at Frontiers Music, and I look forward to hearing everything you have coming down the pike.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate the interview. And
Absolutely.
I love KNAC, so thank you.